Hey everybody, welcome back to Keto and Crime. Today I am looking at what essentially happened in the afternoon on Wednesday the 10th in the Chad DayBell. I've already covered the opening arguments. That video is linked up above, as well as all those developments. So I've already covered that. But there was one witness for the prosecution that took the stand around lunchtime on Wednesday, Detective Ray Hermosillo. He was one of the, or Hermosillo, I'm probably pronouncing that all wrong. I'll just call him Ray. He took the stand around lunchtime and testified up until about the 3 o'clock hour Idaho time. And then yesterday, which was Thursday, April 11th. There is no court today, if you're watching this video when it was released, which is Friday, April 12th. No court today because according to the judge, the things moved a whole lot quicker than they were anticipating. So there was no court on Friday, April 12th. It will pick up on Monday, April 15th. So that's where we are. That's where I'm starting with Ray's testimony. So with that being said, welcome. My name is Tracy. I run Keto and Crime. I am a true crime, horror, movie, and dark history channel. I also occasionally talk about my own weight loss journey. I am holiday tree lady. It changes with the holidays, though right now I am still showing St. Patty's Day, so I'm at least 2 holidays behind. It will be changing to Cinco de Mayo at some point before Cinco de Mayo, so please bear with me. I'm truly sorry. I do have day jobs, and a family, so I do this when I can. I normally post about once a week during active trials of cases that I have followed diligently. I try to summarize each day's testimony if they're available via streaming, via audio recordings, or even via text. I try to review those documents and then bring an entire day's worth of trial to you in under 30 minutes. That's my goal. So with that being said, if you'd like to subscribe, I would love to have you. We have a great community. Let's get started with the first round of testimony in the Chad DayBell trial. All right. So at 11 a.m. Idaho time, Detective Ray Hermosillo takes the stand. He is with the Rexburg Police. He's been with them for about 5 years. Rob Wood goes over his background. He's been in law enforcement for 18 years. He says he was contacted by Fremont sheriffs who helped turn the case over to Rexburg Police. Talking about a Jeep in Rexburg that was involved in a possible murder and attempted murder investigation, i.e. Charles Vallow and Brandon Boudreaux in Arizona. So he then reached out to Gilbert, Arizona, and they asked him to seize the Jeep. This was the Jeep that was registered to Charles Vallow that Tylee had been driving. And he decided to start surveilling Vallow and Daybell at that point, or at least Vallow. He did observe them living their lives, even though he was primarily looking for the Jeep. He did see the Daybells and the Vallows and the Coxes and the Boudreaux, because remember, Melanie Boudreaux is also living with Lori and Alex in the same apartment complex in Rexburg. So then we see some photos and photos of the surveillance of the Jeep. It was a gray Jeep. It was registered to Charles Vallow, and then it showed the Jeep with a Texas license plate. As you recall, Charles Vallow had moved from Arizona to Houston, Texas after he and Lori separated. Now, if you want more in-depth on this case, I've covered the entire Lori Daybell trial. It's on my channel. I've also done deep dives on every player in this case. I'll put that playlist up there. So they did seize the Jeep. Gilbert police had crime analysts flown out, and they served a warrant. They started asking Hermosillo had they noticed the children. He said that he had not, but then again, that wasn't exactly what he was looking for. He was surveilling the Jeep. He then says that that is when Gilbert, Arizona police asked Rexburg to do a welfare check on J.J. Vallow, because this is where his grandparents, the Woodcocks, had reached out to Gilbert police saying they haven't heard from their grandson. Can you please check? They gave them the address of Lori's apartment there in Rexburg, the 565 Pioneer Road. And then he exhibits, some more exhibits are put out for the gallery to look at. It's pictures of JJ Tiley, which came from the infamous iCloud drop, as well as JJ Vallow's birth certificate. And they did confirm these were the children they were asked to do a welfare check on. He was part of the original welfare check done. He got a call from fellow detective Pillar, and they went together on the 26th of November to do the welfare check at the Pioneer Road residence. It was this famous interaction on the cam footage that most of us have seen, where it's Chad DayBell and Alex Cox working in the garage and loading some stuff, and they approach to ask about the welfare of JJ. Basically, they were told by Chad DayBell and Alex Cox that Lori wasn't there, that JJ wasn't there, but he was safe. And then that is where Chad DayBell pretty much denied knowing Lori, certainly didn't mention that he was married to her. So basically, this is where Chad started all of his and lies. They then searched or knocked on Melanie Boudreau's apartment. They found no evidence of anyone there, and eventually reached out to Lori via phone, telling them they were there to do a welfare check on JJ. And eventually, Detective Hermosillo testifies that Lori did finally call Detective Hope back, and this is where they were told that that JJ was staying with Melanie Gibb in Arizona, and then they attempted to reach out to Melanie Gibb, who told them the truth. To her credit, they told them the truth. And then search warrants were served and executed on November 27th. They searched all 3 apartments. They said everything looked ordinary. There were couches, there were papers. It looked as though there were people that lived there. The only thing weird was there were no clothes on any of the hangers in Lori's apartment, which was apartment 175, and they thought that was very weird. They found a few toys and a Star Wars themed suitcase mixed in, as well as an old prescription bottle for JJ. They then searched 174, which was Alex Cox's apartment. Everything was normal, no signs of JJ's. And then apartment 107, which was technically Melanie's, but was completely vacant. They did seize from all 3 apartments large amounts of cash, different styles of weapons in the garage, and all of that was seized as well. After lunch, testimony continues. It's basically showing a bunch of pictures of all the apartments that were searched on the 27th, and it basically a description of everything that was found. Mr. Wood asks how many people were searching the apartments, and the detective answers about 10. He said that they had some red flags because of the way some of the closets look, the fact that it looks like, clothes have been ripped off hangers for a quick getaway, the amount of cash and weapons in the apartment and in the garage. So a lot of things that was kind of suspect. They also showed the photo of the rental agreement that Lori had signed, just to verify that Lori did live there with the children at one point. So a lot of photos of different things in the apartment. Then they produce a picture of Tylee's birth certificate. They talk about how they were entered into, in December of 2019, they were entered into the missing children's database, and that Hermosillo was part of the team assigned to go get Chad and Lori, or go get Lori specifically from Hawaii to serve her with the order to produce the children or be arrested. He was one of the ones that helped serve that on both Chad and Lori in Hawaii. He also discussed where the pictures came from. Again, the infamous Lori for Style iCloud account. They produced that famous picture of Alex Cox, Tylee, and JJ at Yellowstone, which is the last known picture of the children alive. They then show some other pictures of the children showing that they were also taken from that iCloud, the one of JJ eating a yogurt or a milkshake on the couch, to show that the children had been alive and lived in the apartment at a certain time. They then talk about possibility of the search warrant on Chad DayBell's house in Fremont. He said that he was part of the team that served the search warrant for that property in June of 2020. He then shows a Google Earth image of Daybell's entire property. Hermosillo takes the audience through it, kind of shows them, this is where the river is or the lake is. This is the fence. This is the infamous pet cemetery. This is the house. He's very familiar with the layout of Chad DayBell's property. He then talks about the day of the search. He talks about when they arrived at Chad's house, they knocked on the front door. Mark Daybell, one of Chad's sons, answered. He was eating a bowl of cereal. Mark said his dad was still sleeping. Mark let the police in and showed them where Chad was sleeping in a bedroom above the garage. He asked Chad to get dressed and meet them downstairs. He gave Chad the warrant, and Chad asked to speak with his attorney. He called Mark Means, his former attorney, and then Chad sat in a recliner in the front room and read through the search warrant. He asked if he needed to leave. The police told him he didn't need to leave. He could stay, but if he left, he would be accompanied by an officer. Then he said Chad went to make a phone call and then went outside. Hermosillo went with him. Chad asked to sit in the car to make his call. Hermosillo said he stood in the grass near the vehicle. And then he shows again the satellite map of Chad DayBell's property. Hermosillo then uses a laser pointer to show on the map where he and Chad were in the front of the house, where Chad was sitting in his car. And then he shows again the back pasture areas, the infamous animal graveyard, and then kind of shows how they began their search. And he said that Chad looked very nervous and was, inadvertently signaling with his hands. This is most likely him talking to Mark Means, as well as the infamous call that he put into Lori that was recorded at the Fremont County Jail. So we kind of know that Chad was panicking and scared at this point, which to me blows out the whole opening argument of Chad didn't know that people were buried. He was too stupid to know that people were buried on his property that Mr. Pryor gave in his opening arguments the day. Then he talks about how they were concentrating on three main areas of the property due to the text messages and things, the pinging text messages and things with Alex Cox and Tammy Daybell and Chad DayBell. And they were the burn pit, the pet cemetery, and the area along the fence, along the river or the pond. I've heard it called many things. I'm going to say pond from now on. But these were the areas that they were concentrating their search on. He said they marked those off. They marked off 6x6 sections, and then they started to remove the grass and the sod. He said that when they first removed the first layer of sod and grass from the pond area, he smelled a decomposing body. It was very obvious. He said he's smelled decomposing bodies before. There were white rocks under the dirt. There were also boards beneath the white rocks. So they had put boards, then rocks, then dirt, then grass had grown up over that. He said after they removed the boards, there was definitely discoloration in the dirt, which would lead to blood and bodily fluids. And they continued to dig down. After they removed everything, they appeared to see something that took the shape of a human head. At one point, they made a slit in some black plastic they found. They opened it up, and then there was another layer of white plastic under it. So this is where they had wrapped the body in what turned out to be one of the children in plastic before they buried it. And then they discovered what appeared to be a small body wrapped in plastic, which would eventually end up being the body of JJ, the one that was left intact. His body was mostly intact, though, as we know, he was choked, strangled, just like Tylee most likely was, even though Tylee was chopped up and partially burned. We did not see evidence of that with JJ. It looks like he was pretty much buried intact. And then there's a little bit of courtroom discussion at this point, and then they fully dismiss for Wednesday. And then we go into what happened yesterday, Thursday, the 11th, with Detective Hermosillo's testimony continuing. Court started around 9 a.m. They would ask to admit some more exhibits, and then they are more photos of Daybell's property, the search, the west side of the house. It shows some pictures of a car, Chad DayBell's car, parked in front of the house on the day of the search. It then shows the fire pit. He said that it's obvious that it had been used recently. There were burned limbs and other yard waste. And then on the property, it shows the pond area, one that they were talking about, where they found the body of what would turn out to be JJ, which it was mentioned in the testimony the day before. And then it showed the burial area, all the layers from the plastic to the rock to the boards, all that. It shows the condition of the soil that was definitely made by bodily fluids. And then it shows the actual body, the small little body that was found, as well as the condition of the soil after they removed it. And then it talked about they were placed into a body bag by order of the coroner and then sent to the morgue for autopsy and testing. It did show pictures of JJ's body being put into a body bag, which made Chins Daybell a little nervous, as you can imagine. Then from there, they went to the pet cemetery. Again, they recognized it by the little black dog statue next to a post. These are the one of the other areas they were looking to search, and then they were planning to do the burn pit after. They said they used some heavy equipment and smaller hands to start lifting the dirt, sifting through it. And then as they dug deeper, they found bone fragments, what appeared to be burnt flesh protruding through the dirt, that same telltale discoloration of the dirt showing that a body had been there. And then they brought in more equipment so that they could sift through it more carefully, because at that point they realized they were probably dealing with a body in pieces rather than a whole body, as it had been with the body found near the pond. They then show all the different remains that were taken out of the blue tarp when they found it. He said the smell was horrible, obviously decomposing flesh. All of this was also put into a body bag and sent with the coroner. And then they start showing some very graphic pictures of both bodies, the condition of the soil. He went into his opinion that they were burned, that at least Tylee had been chopped up and partially burned. Detective Hermosillo then said that he had followed the coroner, Brenda Dye, to the morgue. They made sure that the morgue was secure and then waited for the autopsy report of the autopsy that would take place on June 11th. And then we go into the details of the autopsy. They detail all of the precautions that were taken, how it was conducted. They showed how they cut the plastic. They showed the condition of the bodies. Basically, it detailed that JJ was wearing red pajama pants and shirt. His arms were folded across his body, and there was duct tape from elbow to elbow. So he was kind of, his ankles were bound with duct tapes. He was wearing a pull-up diaper. He had black Skechers socks on. He said that the condition of the skin appeared to be blue, green, black, and yellow. Then as they cut deeper into the plastic, it was noted that there was duct tape around JJ's head and mouth, and that his wrists were also bound with duct tape. once they removed the duct tape and the bag, he realized it was JJ based on photos he had saw. He had seen those very close and some of the pictures that he had seen. He said there were scratch marks on the side of the neck just under the duct tape. And at that point, he said that they began cutting in and looking at the condition of the organs and things like that. And then very graphic images of the autopsy. Then after a brief break and a sidebar with the attorneys, they go back into the autopsy results. He said that that's all that happened on the 11th. On June 12th, they went back to the autopsy for the continuation, and then they went over everything that kind of happened with the investigation of Tylee's remains, what there was. And then they start talking about some more incidents and facts of the case. They go into the infamous paintball incident with Tammy Daybell, where she believed she was shot at with a paintball on October 9th, 2019. And then he also talked about his knowledge of Lori, Charles Vallow, Alex Cox, JJ, Tylee, Tammy Daybell, and of course Melanie Boudreau, now Pelowaski. They showed photos of all of them, and he described how he had seen them in his observations when he was looking for the Jeep and later for JJ. It is decided that there would be no banned exhibits. Pryor had been trying to get a lot of the graphic photos of the bodies thrown out. The judge was not having it. So basically, they allowed all of the graphic photos into evidence. Then they talked about the attempted homicide of Brandon Boudreau, the timeline for that happened on October 7th. The attempted shooting of Tammy Daybell on October 9th. They also prompted that the last known time that JJ and Tylee were seen alive was the last part of September. So they were setting up, September to early October is when a lot of these key incidents happened. And then they kind of move into more of the investigation. Their interviews with Melanie Gibb, how she did eventually tell the truth. And then they go back into the timeline of the welfare checks and how this all fits together. Very methodical. Wood is very methodical. And then right after 1:30, we're into the cross-examination by Pryor, and they then show some of the Facebook and social media accounts of some of the players, and then they go back to the attempted shooting of Tammy Daybell, including details of the Toyota truck that Tammy was driving that day. And then they talk about some of the incidents right after the October 9th attempted shooting, about Alex Cox's Google searches that were also brought up in Lori Vallow's trial, including how to make an AR-15 function in cold weather, which linked Alex to being the potential shooter on that day, or would-be shooter. He also showed Google searches about Hannibal Lecter and just very morbid stuff, including 15 facts about the Silence of the Lambs, i.e. how to cut up a body. Of course, projecting there. He's doing some other they then talk about when Alex Cox went after Joseph Ryan in 2007, that he actually served a little jail time for that. Also talking about the many times that Lori and Chad went on vacation and talked about things, and how all the subpoena stuff worked. Then they then talk about David Warwick, Melanie Gibb, Lori Vallow, the infamous falling out there. Pryor then goes into trying to tear down each and every point that Rob Wood has already put up. He's asking him to clarify some of the procedure about the initial welfare check, about how things were handled in Hawaii, about some of the Google searches, doing what lawyers do, trying to tear it down. He then asked if how do they know that the last time JJ was alive was in September? He simply, Hermosillo answers it very well, says it's because of the last known picture. He then, Pryor then asks for a detailed list of who all was in the apartments and who all they suspected lived in the apartments during the time that they lived there. Just a lot of names and dates and procedure about how those things were handled. He then asks about how JJ being found in red pajamas and Skechers socks means anything, and he wanted him to clarify if the same red pajamas shown in the infamous yogurt picture was, they suspect the same clothes that were found on JJ, and if that's exactly what he was wearing when supposedly Alex Cox came in with JJ sleeping and the Warwicks and Melanie Gibbs saw them the last time that they saw him supposedly alive. And Hermosa basically says, I don't know if it's the exact same outfit, but it looks similar. And so Pryor rests and Wood now will redirect. He asks who Chad Daybell was with when Hermosa first met Chad. He reiterates it was Alex Cox. Would then ask if the detective if Chad looked scared of Alex Cox, and Hermosillo says absolutely not. Would then ask about the initial scope and investigation when he began investigating. He's then again clarifies it was about the Jeep, and then later about JJ. And then as things started to unfold, there was more searches into Alex Cox, and then the Google searches, the AR, which led them to believe that it was him that attempted to kill Tammy Daybell on October 9th. Wood then asks if Tammy dying 10 days later on October 19th had any bearing on whether or not he believes it was a paintball gun. Hermosa says yes. Wood asks him to clarify. He says just the fact that Chad got married 17 days after Tammy had a bearing on his belief it was a paintball gun, and Hermosa says yes. And then they go back to the searches about the AR-15. So basically a lot more clarifying of what Alex Cox was up to, the fact that he died under supposedly mysterious circumstances in December, all of that mess. They then talk more about Alex's Google searches, his phone pings, and then Wood says he has no further questions. Pryor then redirects again. He starts asking about the whereabouts of Alex Cox on Chad Daybell's property on October 9th. Pryor asked if they looked at all of Alex's phone records for the day. Hermosa said they were more interested in the time frame that the particular incident happened. So then Pryor starts asking a whole lot about metadata and how that stuff can be convoluted, and then asked Hermosa to clarify that Alex's phone was not on Chad Daybell's property before the paintball incident. Pryor then asked how long Chad Daybell's driveway is, and said is it possible that he was actually pinging from the road, driving by, not actually being on the property. Basically, Hermosa said he can't really answer that. Then there's a little sidebar about the evidence that was admitted, and they are dismissed. And as I'd already said, it was determined that they are way ahead of schedule, so no trial today. I suspect that they'll officially release Hermosillo from his first round of testimony with the understanding he can always be brought back, and they'll probably move on with the prosecution's second witness on Monday. And I will be back as soon as that information is available and as soon as I can listen to that live stream. And I hope you enjoyed this. And until next time, Keto Krime.